guys, it's Ella. So today I'm going to do my top 14 of 2014, and I'm also going to do the 3 worst books that I read this year. Yeah, it's pretty self-explanatory, so I'm just gonna get started. These are in no particular order, not really anyway. I just kind of threw the list together. There's no way that I could put these in order, so let's just not even start. So the first book that I'm going to talk about is Fangirl by Rainbow Rowell. This was the first book by Rainbow Rowell that I read, and I loved it. This was a super cute book. Rainbow Rowell has a very interesting way of creating characters for her stories, and these characters were both so awkward and so cute at the same time that I loved the story. Strongly recommend. This was definitely, all of these books were 5-star books, so Rainbow Rowell's Fangirl. The second book that I'm going to talk about is Article 5 by Kristen Simmons, and this is a dystopian book. This is the first book in a trilogy, but this entire trilogy was one of my favorites simply because of the fact that this is probably the only trilogy that I read so far ever that did not have a love triangle in it. The two main characters just loved each other and stayed with each other through the entire trilogy, and it was just really refreshing. Plus it was a very interesting story. I haven't really seen anybody talk about these, but it really is a great story, and it's a unique story with really great characters. Next up is Under the Never Sky by Veronica Rossi. This is through the Evernight. I can't find my copy of Under the Never Sky. It's in a box somewhere. I actually haven't read this one, but the first one, basically it was just because of the characters in the story. They are so unique, but they find a way to come together, and it was very refreshing. Plus the way it was written, it was very action-packed, and it was just so much fun. The story was great. Great writing, great world building. It was just such a beautifully written story, and so I am actually looking forward to picking up this one, but just the entire trilogy from what I've heard is pretty great. But so far, Under the Never Sky blew my mind, blew me away. Next I have I Hunt Killers by Barry Lyga, and this is actually a signed copy that I got at BookCon, but this story is not like anything that I have read in YA. It's twisted, it's dark, it is a mystery, but the characters are so great, and the story, so many twists and turns. You won't see so many things coming. It's just so well written. The entire trilogy is so incredibly well written. I feel like especially the second book has so many twists and turns, but this I would definitely recommend if you are into really dark books and mysteries and things with a lot of twists. It is a little bit graphic, so that is something to keep in mind. The main character's dad is a serial killer, and it's obviously about murderers and killers and things. Definitely a great book, 5 stars, so crazy, blew my mind on so many levels. Next I have The Darkest Minds by Alexandra Bracken, and this is a dystopian book, but it's so well written. Ruby, the main character, at first is such a crappy character. I mean, there's no other way to describe it. She's just an awful person. And then there's so much character growth, and there's so many hard choices that need to be made here, and these kids in this book do it. They do it, and they find a way to do it, and they find a way to survive through it. They find a way to keep the relationships that they have built. It also is quite an intense world, and it is really well built. I remember reading this book and just being able to vividly see it in my mind, all the things around it, but it's not super packed with descriptions, which I don't necessarily like. And so this was definitely a great read. Unique story, great characters, great writing, super easy to get into. Number 9, we have Alienated by Melissa Landers, and I've talked about this book so much, but I love it so much, and it's so absurd because the premise just sounds so silly, but I love this book. It is a paranormal romance, but it's so much more than that. It talks about human nature and how we react to things that we're not comfortable with. I don't even I love this book so much. The writing is so quirky and there's so many fun points where there's banter back and forth and really funny one-liners. I think this was the funniest book that I've read all year, which is really weird because it's a romance and it's, I don't know. But the writing is just blew me away, completely blew me away. So funny, adorable, great characters, and just the way that the relationships between the characters, I feel like I'm a broken tape. But the relationships between the characters are just so well written that you can't help but just be there with them. There's so much animosity between the characters and between the town that they live in. Definitely, if you're into kind of human nature type stories, but also romance, pick this up. Next, I have The Winner's Curse by Marie Rudkowski, and this is a book that it took me a little bit to get into, but once I did, it really, really grabbed me. And this is mostly about, at least the way I look at it, is about right and wrong, how it's never black and white. The choice between right and wrong is never black and white. There's always a gray area. It's very well written. Again, great world building. I feel like the characters in this, while they could have been a little bit more developed, I feel like this was an amazing first book to a trilogy. I definitely strongly recommend this. It's got a gorgeous cover and it was just completely, again, blew me away. I mean, this is my top 14 of 2014, so you know I love all of these books, but this I pretty much recommend to everybody just because it is a lot about right and wrong while it does have a backdrop of war and romance and just that kind of stuff. Next, I have Pivot Point by Casey West, and this book was so great just because I am not a huge fan of kind of dual timelines, and this is all about a girl who can, once she's given a choice, she can look into the future and see both outcomes. And so this was so well done. This was very much unexpected. Even though we're kind of watching these two paths, you get to know the characters on both sides. And this is a short book. It is not long. So the way the author wrote it was just completely phenomenal. In this amount of pages to squeeze that much story and plot and character development and just everything else completely blew my socks off. I was definitely looking forward to this, but I was not expecting to love it as much as I did. Next, it's Saga by Brian K. Vaughan and Fiona Staples. This is Saga Volume 1. This is the only graphic novel on my list because I haven't read a whole lot of graphic novels, but I loved this story just because of the characters. They're so easy to identify with. That's not to say that I'm an alien and I'm being hunted down, but the art is beautiful. I'm trying to show you something that isn't super duper graphic. The art is beautifully done, and even though you only get speech bubbles from these characters, they're so easy to just root for them just because they're such great people. Quick PSA, this is very graphic. It is full of adult content, and when I say that, I don't say it lightly, just because I was a little bit surprised at the amount of adult content in there. But I also feel like that's a good thing just because it is a graphic novel and it is for adults. It is not for children at all. So there's something to keep in mind. Beautifully written, beautiful story, so many different points of view that you see on both sides of this war that it just completely surprised me and shocked me. Next, I have The Bone Season by Samantha Shannon. I feel like when I first finished reading this, I wasn't as big of a fan of this book as I am now, just because it took me a while to sit on it and just think about it and kind of let it stew a little bit. I wasn't a huge fan of the ending, but this is the first book in like 7-book series. And this has been compared to Harry Potter, which is probably the silliest thing anybody could have ever said about this book because it's nothing like Harry Potter. This is an adult book. It is a paranormal, I guess you could say, fantasy, like alternate world sort of situation. And this is quite a long book. It did take me a little bit to get into the story. Once I did, I was hooked. These characters, they fight so hard to get what it is that they need and what it is that they want that you just can't help but root for them, no matter if it's good, bad, or ugly. You're there. you're there and you're cheering him on, and it's just such a good story. There is a little bit of romance, but there isn't any of that angstiness. The romance isn't the focal point of the story. The world and clairvoyance system is the focal point of the story. Definitely something that I would recommend. Next is Trial by Fire by Josephine Angelini. Now this is the first book in a trilogy. This is a book that not many people have talked about, which actually surprises me. I thought this was phenomenal. The writing, again, really great, completely sucks you in. The relationships between the characters, it's kind of like a parallel world, definitely, and it's about witches. And so definitely not what I expected. It's definitely a good story. The writing and the banter, the friendly banter back and forth, and it is a lot about kind of standing up for what you believe in and just kind of going with your gut more than anything else and just doing what you need to do. It is also a little bit of a romance, but I feel like it's not the main point of the story. There is so much more to the story than that, and the writing more than anything blew me away. I love the story, I love the characters, I love the writing. Next, I have The Knife of Never Letting Go by Patrick Ness, and this is book 1 in the Chaos Walking trilogy. The entire trilogy completely blew me away. I did not expect to like these books, but I picked it up just because I have heard good things and it sounded like such an interesting premise. This is unlike anything else that I have read ever. The story and the writing is beautiful. I remember crying and laughing at the same time, and it was just so heartwarming and such a beautiful story and such amazing characters. I was a little bit worried because the main character, Todd, is a little bit young, and so I was worried as to where the story would go. But it's not, again, not weird, funky, angsty romance. It's very much about war and people, and that's what it concentrates on. It's kind of lesser of two evils, if you will. The entire trilogy is. I loved it. This may be like number 2 as far as my favorite books of the year go. Completely blew me away. I mean, even as far as all books in general, not just YA books, I think more people need to read this just because it is such a poignant story, and again, amazing world building, amazing writing. I have a thing. What can I say? Just, I don't care. Whatever the reason is, pick this up because it's completely worth it. Even though it is long, all 3 of the books are long. There's also a short story. Blew my socks off. Completely blew my socks off. I just love these books. I love these books so much. They're, changed my life. Next, I have The Archive by Victoria Schwab. And it took me a little bit to get into it just because there was flashbacks, which I'm not a fan of. But once I did, boy oh boy. The story is so creative and so much fun, and these characters, again, I have a thing with characters in stories if you can't tell, but also I feel like there has to be an amazing plot, and this book had amazing plot that was not necessarily fast-paced, but I feel like it was an appropriate pace, and I never got a chance to get bored with the characters, with the story. I do think that it was more about the characters and kind of the lonely life that they lead, and just finding another person that kind of knows what the heck you're going through. Beautiful story. These characters. Guyliner, can we take a second? Also, in case you didn't know, there's a short story coming out on January 6th from Marcy's point of view. You're welcome. And finally, Dreams of Gods and Monsters by Laini Taylor. I love this book. This is a beefy volume. It is the last book in the Daughter of Smoke and Bone trilogy. I love this book so much. The writing is so rich and beautiful and picturesque, and these characters are so well developed, and there's so much character growth, and just I can't even describe it. This book like changed my life. This isn't normally something that I would pick up. It is like an urban fantasy, but I'm so incredibly glad that I did. Laini Taylor's writing is phenomenal. It's not like anything else that I've ever read, and I feel like it doesn't shy away from being a little bit more intense than usual young adult writing, which is one of the reasons why I liked it, but it is essentially just beautiful. I did a separate review of this book, and I will link that down below. Just the language that she uses. She doesn't flat out come out and say stuff. She kind of, in a roundabout way, describes it. And I know that sounds terrible, and I know that sounds like it would be awful and just so annoying to read. but it's so beautifully done. And this is the final book of a trilogy that I love. I love this entire trilogy just because of all the characters. But also I feel like if you like the kind of premise of Saga, you would enjoy these books because it is a similar premise. This book, man. Okay, now we're gonna move on to the 3 terrible books of the year. The first one is Halfbat by Sally Green. The writing, I did not like. I couldn't connect with the main character. I don't really know what else to say about this. I also did a separate review of this book. I will also link that down below. I did not enjoy this book. I know a lot of people did. It just wasn't for me. Next, I have Hades by Alexandra Adornado, and this is actually the second book in a trilogy. The first one was Halo. I haven't even read this one, but Halo is the one I want to talk to you about. It was terrible. The writing was awful. The main character was an idiot ditz. Angel books are just not for me. And the way that these are written, the main character is completely clueless, and it's basically like reading a book through the eyes of a 5-year-old that doesn't know what's going on. Next is a book that I actually don't have a physical copy around me. I couldn't find it, and that's Me and Earl and the Dying Girl by Jessie Andrews. I'm gonna show it to you on my phone. This was terrible. I know a lot of people like it. I know a lot of people find it funny. I am not a huge fan of stupid funny. Plus, I feel like you get about halfway through and you're like, what is the point of this? Why am I reading this? Like, is there a point to the story? There isn't. And so I feel like that's what kind of threw me off. And I know a lot of people raving about this book. It did have a creative writing style, but other than that, I couldn't relate to the characters. Their relationships were terrible. I mean, I did not like. So let me know what some of your favorite and least favorite books were down below, and I will link some of the reviews that I did on some of these books also down in the doohickey, so check those out. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, you know where all that stuff goes, and I will see you next time. Bye!